We have reached the great crossroads. Humanity is awakening. And all of you that have played your part in standing up to the censors, standing up to the bullies, and spreading the word are at the heart of this new renaissance. That's why, for myself and the entire InfoWars crew, I want to salute you all for what you've done in the information war and what you've also done on the streets peacefully. And why I'm asking you now more than ever to redouble your efforts, because victory is within sight.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. In the next segment, we're going to be joined by Owen Schroyer. We were talking earlier about Donald Trump's visit to Paris, meeting with the Sun King, Jupiter himself, Macron, who is pushing this climate deal that Trump wisely exited with the advice of his EPA pick and many other people who really understand what's going on with this. We have to get out of this. People who even support the idea that we've got to eliminate carbon dioxide, that it's going to burn the planet up. They know that this isn't going to do anything towards it. All it is going to do is just harm our economy. And there was a story from WorldNet Daily earlier this week. U.S. cities and states who are in love with the Paris climate deal face a new hurdle. A lot of these people have said, we're going to stay in the climate deal. We don't care if Donald Trump gets us out. Well, actually, no, you don't have a say in that. They say about a dozen states, including Washington, Oregon, California, Minnesota, Virginia, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, rebelled against President Trump when he withdrew from the Paris Climate Accord. And, you know, it was interesting because earlier this week we had Turkey come out and say, we're going to get out of it as well, because if the U.S. isn't in there to give us money, then there's nothing in it for us to shut our economy down. We're going to shut our economy down, but we're going to get massive cash payments from the United States. That only highlights what a horrendous deal this is for the United States, because we have to shut down our economy, and we have to do it at an earlier date than the so-called developing nations, but then we have to compensate them as well. So we shut down our economy and send massive amounts of money to these other countries, but more specifically, it's going to go to the leaders of those countries. That's the way foreign aid works, don't you understand? You've seen that before. We all know how that works. We all know that the person who was going to get the money was Erdogan himself. It wasn't going to go to the Turkish people. It wasn't going to go to their economy. It was something that he was going to pocket. That's the way it happens in these third world countries. So some of the states have already formed the United States Climate Alliance to uphold the previous U.S. commitment that is not a commitment. Obama self-ratified it because he couldn't get Congress to sign on to the constitutional ratification process. So he just made it up. He and Kerry signed it, so we're going to ratify it ourselves. No, it doesn't work. And he found out, as we all know, that if he comes in and just says, well, I'm going to do it by executive order, then Donald Trump comes in and says, well, I'm going to undo it by executive order. It doesn't have any effect. They said there's also 267 mayors and governors who have signed an open letter to the international community and to other parties of the Paris Agreement. However, there is a problem. Congressional Research Service says the Constitution, remember that Constitution? That thing these guys swear to that we don't usually pay any attention to, but maybe they will now. It allows for federal law to preempt state and local law in a number of areas, including foreign policy. Yes, that is not their jurisdiction. And they point out this. They said, even when there is no actual conflict between state and federal law or policy, the Supreme Court has held that a state law can still be deemed an unconstitutional intrusion into the field of foreign affairs if it results in something more than an incidental or indirect effect on U.S. foreign relations. In other words, this is kind of like the Logan Act. Remember when we have Bilderberg and we say we got people that are engaging in setting U.S. policy. Actually, they're also doing something that is far worse, far more criminal than what Donald Trump Jr. Was even ever accused of. We got people who are at the highest level of multiple governments meeting in private. Nobody is allowed to know what they're talking about. They show up, as we saw Ed Ball from the UK shows up with a suitcase, not with clothes, filled with papers. They keep saying, oh, this is just a friendly meeting. He showed up with a suitcase filled with papers. We got it on film. My wife was there as an InfoWars reporter, shot him as all this stuff fell out of his suitcase while he was fumbling for his credentials to try to get into the place, showing what a lie this whole thing is. That is a violation of the Logan Act when you got people who are trying to override our foreign policy, just as John McCain has done, trying to conduct foreign policy, going over and supporting ISIS in Syria. That's a violation of the Logan Act. And if these states and mayors try to get involved in setting our foreign policy with the climate Paris Agreement, that is also a violation of the Logan Act and the Constitution, I would add. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Owen Schroyer.
What the aging process is when the cell replicates, we lose a little bit of our telomeres. Telomeres are the little cups on the end of our chromosomes.
And when it runs out, you start dying. Secure your DNA force today at InfoWarsLife.com.